"Mommy, that man looks hungry," a 4-year-old girl whispered to her mother as she pushed her Happy Meal across the table toward a stranger, not knowing he owned every McDonald's restaurant in the city. This is the story of how one small act of kindness would change 3 lives forever, proving that sometimes the people who have the least are the ones willing to give the most. It was a gray Tuesday afternoon in downtown Portland, and the McDonald's on Morrison Street buzzed with the usual lunch crowd. But for Sarah Martinez, this wasn't just another meal, it was a celebration she could barely afford. Sarah sat in a corner booth, watching her 4-year-old daughter Mia carefully arrange her chicken nuggets in a perfect line, her small face glowing with pure joy. The Happy Meal had cost $12. Sarah had counted 3 times from the jar of coins and crumpled bills hidden behind the cereal boxes at home. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. "Look, Mommy," Mia giggled, holding up the small plastic toy that came with her meal. "It's a little dog, just like the one we're gonna get someday." Sarah's heart clenched. They both knew that someday felt impossibly far away. Since losing her job at the local grocery store 2 months ago, every dollar had been stretched until it screamed. Their apartment rent was already a week late, and she'd been surviving on peanut butter sandwiches so Mia could eat proper meals. But today was different. Today was Mia's half-birthday, something Sarah had invented when Mia asked why her real birthday was so far away. 4.5. Mia had announced that morning, holding up 4 fingers and struggling with the thumb. And somehow Sarah had found a way to make it special. The McDonald's was warm, a refuge from the October rain that had been falling all week. Sarah sipped her water free with the meal and tried to make the moment last. This was luxury for them now, sitting somewhere bright and clean, where Mia's laughter could echo without worrying about the neighbors below. "Mommy, can we stay here forever?" Mia asked, swinging her legs under the table. "Just a little while." "Longer, baby," Sarah whispered, brushing a strand of dark hair from Mia's forehead. That's when she noticed in the opposite corner of the restaurant sat a man who seemed to carry winter with him. His gray beard was unkempt, his worn jacket too thin for the weather, and his weathered hands wrapped around an empty coffee cup like it was his only source of warmth. He stared out the rain-streaked window with the hollow look of someone who had been forgotten by the world. Sarah recognized that look. She'd seen it in her own reflection lately, the exhaustion that comes from counting every penny, from choosing between electricity and groceries, from smiling at your child while your heart breaks with worry. The man hadn't ordered food. For the past 20 minutes, he'd just sat there, nursing that single cup of coffee, his shoulders hunched against some invisible cold. Occasionally, his eyes would drift toward the counter, but then he'd look away, checking his pockets with the practiced motion of someone who already knew they were empty. Sarah felt her chest tighten. She knew that feeling, wanting something as simple as a warm meal, but not having the means to afford it. "Mommy," Mia's voice was soft, almost a whisper. "That man looks hungry." Sarah followed her daughter's gaze to the stranger. Mia was staring at him with the pure, uncomplicated concern that only children possess, the kind that sees need without judgment, that offers help without wondering if it's deserved. "He does look hungry, doesn't he?" Sarah agreed quietly, without hesitation. Mia picked up her Happy Meal box still half full of nuggets, apple slices, and her beloved toy and slid out of the booth. "Mia, honey, wait." But Mia was already walking across the restaurant, her small sneakers squeaking against the tile floor. Sarah's heart hammered as she watched her 4-year-old daughter approach a complete stranger, carrying her precious meal like an offering. The man looked up, startled, as Mia appeared beside his table. Up close, Sarah could see his eyes, deep brown, kind, but clouded with a sadness that seemed to run bone deep. His clothes were clean but worn, the kind of worn that spoke of careful mending and precious few replacements. "Hi," Mia said simply, setting her Happy Meal box on his table. "You look hungry. Do you want to share my chicken nuggets?" The man's face went through a series of expressions: surprise, confusion, and then something that looked dangerously close to tears. His weathered hands trembled slightly as he stared at the small box, as if he couldn't quite believe what was happening. His voice was rough, unused. "I couldn't take your food, sweetheart." "It's okay," Mia said with the confident authority of a 4-year-old who had never been taught to doubt her own kindness. "Mommy says sharing makes food taste better. And look," she opened the box and held up the toy. "You can have the puppy too. Maybe he'll keep you warm." Sarah stood frozen by their booth, watching this interaction unfold. She should probably intervene, should teach Mia about stranger danger, should protect their meal that had cost so much. But something about the man's expression stopped her. There was no threat in his posture, no calculation. Just pure, overwhelming shock at receiving unexpected kindness. "What's your name?" the man asked softly. "Mia, this is my half-birthday," she announced proudly. "I'm 4.5 now." "Half-birthday," he repeated, a small smile finally reaching his eyes. "That's very special." "Mommy says every day can be special if you look for the magic," Mia said, pushing the box closer to him. "Are you gonna eat? The nuggets are still warm." Sarah watched as this stranger, this man who looked like he hadn't had a proper meal in days, carefully took one small nugget from the box, as if it were made of gold. The gratitude in his eyes was so raw, so genuine, that Sarah felt tears prick at her own eyes. "Thank you," he whispered to Mia. This is the kindest thing anyone has done for me in a very long time." And in that moment, as her 4-year-old daughter beamed up at a stranger and offered her most treasured possession to someone who needed it more, Sarah Martinez had no idea that they had just changed the life of the man who owned every McDonald's restaurant in the Pacific Northwest. The magic Mia spoke of was about to become very, very real. 3 days after Mia's half-birthday, Sarah found herself walking past the Morrison Street McDonald's again. She hadn't planned it, or maybe she had subconsciously. Mia tugged at her hand, pressing her nose against the rain-spotted window. "Is he there, Mommy? Is our friend there?" Sarah's heart squeezed. Our friend. That's what Mia had been calling him since Tuesday. The man who had sat in stunned silence as her daughter shared her most precious meal, who had carefully saved half the nuggets and insisted Mia take them back home. And there he was, same corner, table, same empty coffee cup, same lost expression. But this time, when Mia waved enthusiastically through the window, he looked up and smiled, really smiled, the kind that reaches all the way to tired eyes. "Can we say hi?" Mia pleaded. Sarah hesitated. She'd found $2 in her coat pocket this morning, enough for a small coffee and maybe some apple slices for Mia. But was it safe? Was it wise? Then she remembered how gently he'd spoken to Mia. How his hands had shaken, not with threat but with emotion. How he'd asked her name and listened like her words were poetry. "Just for a few minutes," Sarah heard herself saying. The man's name was David. David Chun. He told them, though something flickered in his eyes when he said it, like he was remembering how to introduce himself. He'd been coming to this McDonald's every day for 2 weeks, he admitted, nursing a single coffee and watching the world go by. "Are you sleeping outside?" Mia asked with the blunt innocence that made Sarah cringe. "Mia, honey, it's okay," David said softly. "Sometimes, sweetheart. Sometimes I stay at a shelter downtown. Sometimes I just walk." Sarah's chest tightened. She'd been homeless once, briefly, when Mia was a baby and the medical bills from the complicated birth had buried them. 3 weeks in her car, bathing Mia in fast food restrooms, until a church program had helped them find their tiny apartment. "Walking's good exercise," Mia said seriously, then brightened. "Do you like coloring? I have crayons." And just like that, Mia had pulled out her small activity book and spread it across David's table. Sarah watched, amazed as this weathered man carefully colored inside the lines of a cartoon butterfly, his large hands surprisingly gentle as Mia directed him on proper color choices. "Purple butterflies are magical," Mia explained. "Blue ones are just pretty." "I see," David said gravely. "Magic is definitely better than just pretty." Sarah found herself sitting down, ordering a small coffee she could barely afford. But watching Mia's joy, seeing David's face transform as he colored and listened to her daughter's endless chatter about her imaginary pet dinosaur and her dreams of becoming a butterfly doctor, felt worth more than the $2. The visits became routine. Every few days, when Sarah could scrape together enough for a coffee or small snack, they'd stop by. David was always there, always in the same corner, but now he'd light up when he saw them coming. Sarah learned things about him slowly. He'd been an engineer once, worked with numbers and blueprints. He'd had a family, a wife named Linda, grown children somewhere on the East Coast who didn't call anymore. Something had gone wrong, some series of events he spoke around rather than through, and he'd ended up here, alone, forgotten. "I used to build things," he told Sarah one afternoon while Mia played with the broken toy from last week's Happy Meal. "Bridges mostly, things that connected places." "That's beautiful work," Sarah said, meaning it. "I thought so. But bridges are only useful if people want to cross them." Sarah understood. She thought about the bridges she'd tried to build with Mia's father, with her own parents who'd cut contact when she'd refused to give Mia up for adoption. Some bridges, no matter how well engineered, couldn't span certain distances. Mia had no such philosophical complications. To her, David was simply their friend who needed more coloring books and someone to listen to her stories. She'd save him the toy from her Happy Meal whenever Sarah could manage one, carefully explaining each character's backstory and special powers. "This one's a wizard," she told him seriously, placing a small plastic figure in his weathered palm. "He makes sad people happy again." David's eyes filled, but he nodded gravely. "That's very powerful magic." "The best kind," Mia agreed. It was David who first noticed that Mia's shoes were too small. Sarah had been hoping to make them last until after Christmas, maybe find something at the thrift store, but David spotted how Mia walked, favoring the outsides of her feet, the way children do when their shoes pinch. "Those look uncomfortable, little butterfly," he said gently. Mia shrugged. "They're okay. Mommy says they'll stretch." Sarah felt heat flood her cheeks. Of course he'd noticed. Of course this stranger could see what she'd been trying to hide, that they were drowning, that every day was a choice between this necessity and that one. "I used to know a cobbler," David said carefully, not looking at Sarah directly. "Old man who repaired shoes. Always said the feet were the foundation of everything. Maybe we could find Mia some foundation that fits." Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. "We're fine," Sarah said quickly, the automatic response of someone who'd learned that pride was sometimes all you had left. But David just nodded, understanding in his eyes. "Of course, I just meant, if you ever wanted company on a shopping trip, I know where the best deals are." And somehow his words didn't feel like charity. They felt like friendship. That night, Mia carefully arranged her small collection of Happy Meal toys on her nightstand. "Mommy," she said sleepily, "I think David is lonely like we used to be." "What do you mean, baby?" "Before we had each other every day. Remember when you used to cry at night and think I couldn't hear?" Sarah's throat closed. "I remember." David has that same sound in his voice. Like he needs more friends. "You're very wise, little one." "I think we should keep him," Mia said simply. "Like a family. Is that okay?" Sarah kissed her daughter's forehead, breathing in the scent of strawberry shampoo and childhood dreams. "I think that's more than okay." Neither of them knew that 3 blocks away, David Chun sat in a 24-hour diner, staring at the small plastic wizard in his palm and remembering what it felt like to matter to someone. For the first time in 2 years, he wasn't thinking about the past or worrying about tomorrow, that he was thinking about a little girl who colored butterflies purple and a mother who counted coins to buy kindness and how they'd given him something more valuable than money. They'd given him hope. That it was the second Thursday of November when everything changed. Sarah had been looking forward to this day for weeks. Mia's first school field trip to the Children's Museum. Something that required a permission slip, a packed lunch, and $5 she'd managed to save by walking instead of taking the bus. But at 6 a.m., Mia woke up burning with fever. "Mommy, my throat hurts," she whispered, her small voice hoarse and weak. Sarah's heart sank as she felt Mia's forehead. 101 degrees. There would be no field trip, no museum, no excited stories about dinosaur bones and planetarium shows. Just another day of choosing between a doctor's visit they couldn't afford and hoping it would pass on its own. She called in sick to her new part-time job at the grocery store. 3 strikes and you're out, her manager had warned, and this was strike 2, but Mia came first. Mia always came first. By noon, the fever had broken, but Mia was listless, disappointed, and asking repeatedly about David. "Can we go see our friend?" she pleaded from the couch, wrapped in their one good blanket. "I want to show him my new drawing." Sarah looked at the crayon picture Mia had been working on all week, a purple butterfly with David's name written in wobbly letters underneath. She'd been so excited to give it to him. "Maybe tomorrow, baby. You need to rest." But Mia's eyes filled with tears. "I promised him, Mommy. I promised I'd bring him my butterfly today. He's probably waiting." And Sarah knew, with the terrible certainty that comes with loving someone more than your own life, that Mia was right. David would be waiting. He was always there, always in that corner booth, and today he'd be looking for them. Against her better judgment, Sarah bundled Mia extra layers and made the 6-block walk to McDonald's. Mia clutched her drawing like a sacred artifact, her cheeks still flushed but her spirits lifting with each step. "He's going to love it," she said confidently. Purple butterflies are the most magical. But when they arrived, David's corner table was empty. Mia pressed her face against the window, searching every booth, every corner. "Where is he, Mommy? He's always here." Sarah felt a chill that had nothing to do with the November wind. In all their weeks of visits, David had never not been there. It was as reliable as sunrise. David in his corner, nursing his coffee, waiting for them with that gentle smile. They went inside, ordered a small hot chocolate for Mia, and waited. 1 hour, 2 hours. The restaurant filled and emptied with the lunch crowd, but David never appeared. "Maybe he's sick too," Mia said hopefully, but Sarah could see the worry in her daughter's eyes. At 4 years old, Mia had already learned that people could disappear without warning. "I'm sure he's fine, sweetheart. Maybe he just had somewhere else to be today." But as they walked home, Mia clutching her undelivered drawing, Sarah felt a familiar dread settling in her chest. She'd seen this before, the way people on the margins could simply vanish, swallowed by a world that barely noticed them in the first place. They went back the next day, and the next. A week passed without any sign of David, and Mia's bright chatter about their friend slowly faded into worried silence. "Did we do something wrong?" she asked one evening, staring at the growing collection of drawings she'd made. "For him, did we make him sad?" "No, baby. Sometimes adults have complicated things happen. It doesn't mean you did anything wrong." But Sarah wasn't sure she believed her own words. She found herself taking longer routes past the shelter David had mentioned, scanning faces on street corners, asking the McDonald's staff if they'd seen him. The teenage manager just shrugged. "Homeless guy? Yeah, he stopped coming in. They always move on eventually. He wasn't Sarah started, then stopped. What was David to them, really? A friend? A charity case? Someone playing a role they'd needed him to play? "Mommy," Mia said one night as Sarah tucked her in, "what if David is lost? What if he needs help and we can't find him?" "I don't know, sweetheart, but we're his family now. Families don't give up." The simple certainty in Mia's voice broke something open in Sarah's chest. Her 4-year-old daughter understood. Something about loyalty that the adult world seemed to have forgotten. It was Mia who spotted him first, 2 weeks after he'd disappeared. They were walking past Pioneer Courthouse Square when she suddenly stopped, her small hand tight in Sarah's. "Mommy, look." David sat on a bench near the fountain, but he looked different. Cleaned up. His beard was trimmed, his clothes newer. He sat very still, staring at something in his hands. "David." Mia broke free and ran toward him before Sarah could stop her. He looked up, startled, and Sarah saw his face transform: surprise, joy, and something that looked almost like guilt. "Mia, Sarah." He stood quickly, slipping whatever he'd been holding into his jacket pocket. I've been hoping I'd see you." "Where have you been?" Mia demanded, her small hands on her hips. "We looked for you everywhere. I drew you 17. Butterflies, 17? David knelt to her level, his eyes bright. "That's more butterflies than some gardens have." "We thought something bad happened," Mia continued, her voice wobbling. "We thought maybe you forgot about us." "Oh, sweetheart." David's voice was rough. "I could never forget about you." "Never." Sarah studied his face, noting the changes. He looked better, healthier, but there was something else, something guarded in his expression that hadn't been there before. "You look different," she said carefully. Some things changed. I've been staying somewhere new, more permanent." "That's wonderful," Sarah said, and meant it. But she couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to the story. "Can you come see us again?" Mia asked. "At McDonald's? I have so many drawings to show you." David's face went through a complex series of emotions. Yes, I'd like that very much. Tomorrow?" Mia pressed. "Tomorrow," he agreed, but his smile seemed forced. As they walked away, Mia chattering excitedly about all the things she wanted to tell David, Sarah glanced back. He was still standing there, watching them go, and for a moment she could have sworn she saw him pull out a cell phone, the kind that looked far too expensive for someone who'd been sleeping in shelters. But that was impossible, wasn't it? That night, as Mia carefully selected which drawings to bring David the next day, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that their friend was keeping secrets. Important ones. She just had no idea how important they really were. David was waiting for them the next day, but not in his usual corner booth. He sat near the front windows, wearing clothes that Sarah now realized were expensive, not new, but well-made, the kind that aged into character rather than shabby. A briefcase sat beside him on the seat. Mia ran straight to him, her folder of butterfly drawings clutched tight to her chest. "I brought them all. Look, this one has 17 different colors." "It's beautiful," David said, but his voice was strained. He looked at Sarah over Mia's head, and she saw something that made her stomach clench. Fear. "Mia, honey," David said gently, "I need to tell you and your mommy something important. Can you sit with me?" Mia climbed into the booth beside him, spreading her drawings across the table like a colorful offering. "Are you moving away?" "Please don't move away." "No, sweetheart. I'm not moving anywhere. But I haven't been completely honest with you about who I am." Sarah's heart began to pound. She thought of the expensive phone, the subtle changes in his appearance, the way he'd looked guilty when they'd found him in the square. David opened his briefcase and pulled out a business card, placing it gently on the table between Mia's drawings. Sarah leaned forward to read it, and the world tilted sideways. "David Chun, regional owner, McDonald's Pacific Northwest." "I don't understand," Sarah whispered. "You own McDonald's?" Mia asked, tilting her head. Like all of them? Not all of them, David said softly. But this one. And 47 others in Oregon and Washington. Sarah stared at him, her mind reeling. But you were. You said you were sleeping in shelters. I was. David's voice was steady but pained. 2 months ago, I lost everything that mattered to me. My wife Linda died suddenly, cancer, very fast. My children, we'd grown apart over the years. Business consumed so much time, and I thought there would always be more time to fix things. He looked down at his hands. After the funeral, I realized I was completely alone. I had money, properties, business success, but no one who actually cared if I lived or died. So I left. I walked away from everything, ended up on the streets, trying to understand how I'd built such a successful life that felt so empty. That's why you look so sad, Mia said matter-of-factly. When people's hearts hurt, it shows in their eyes. David's composure cracked. Yes, sweetheart. My heart hurt very much. But we helped fix it, right? Mia continued, unconscious of the magnitude of what was unfolding. With the chicken nuggets and the butterflies? You saved my life, David said simply. Both of you. I was ready to give up completely. But then this little girl walked up to me and shared her most precious possession. And her mother showed me what real kindness looked like. Sarah felt tears burning her eyes. Why didn't you tell us? Because for the first time in years, people saw me as just me, not my net worth or my business connections. You fed me when you thought I was hungry. You included me when you thought I was lonely. You showed me more genuine care in a few weeks than I'd experienced in decades of wealth. He pulled out his phone, the expensive one Sarah had glimpsed, and scrolled to a photo. It showed the Morrison Street McDonald's, but with a new sign by the entrance, Mia's Corner, free meals for families in need. I went back to work 3 days ago, David continued. Not because I missed the business, but because I realized what I wanted to do with it. Every McDonald's I own now has a program. Families who need a meal can come in, no questions asked. Children can color while their parents fill out job applications. We partnered with local shelters and schools. Mia stared at the photo. That's my name. The whole program is named after you. Because you taught me that sharing makes everything taste better. Sarah could barely breathe. David, I don't know what to say. Say you'll let me do more. I want to help, really help. Not because you need charity, but because you're family to me now. 6 months later, Sarah stood in the same McDonald's, but everything had changed. She wore the uniform of the assistant manager, a position David had created specifically for her, recognizing her natural compassion and organizational skills. Mia sat in a new corner booth, designated as the children's activity area, helping other kids with their coloring while their parents worked or looked for jobs. Mia's Corner had served over 3,000 free meals and helped dozens of families find employment. Sarah had moved them into a proper 2-bedroom apartment, and Mia finally had the pet she'd dreamed of, a small rescue dog named Nugget. But the most profound change was in David himself. He came by every day, not as the owner checking on business, but as family checking on family. He'd learned to laugh at Mia's jokes, to celebrate her small victories, to be present in the small moments that actually mattered. Mr. David, Mia called out as he entered that Tuesday afternoon. Come see what Emma drew. She gestured to a shy 7-year-old whose family had been coming for hot meals while her father looked for work. David knelt beside the children, admiring Emma's drawing of a purple butterfly with careful attention. Sarah watched from behind the counter, marveling at how naturally he'd adapted to this new role, not the corporate executive, but the honorary grandfather, the family friend, the man who remembered what mattered. You know what, Emma? David said seriously. I think purple butterflies are the most magical kind. That's exactly what Mia says. Emma giggled. Mia is very wise about butterflies. That evening, after the restaurant had closed and the last family had headed home with full bellies and renewed hope, Sarah, David, and Mia sat in their original corner booth. Mia colored in her newest butterfly book while the adults talked quietly. "I never thanked you properly," David said, "for saving my life." "You were never the one who needed saving," Sarah replied. "We all did. Mia taught us both something that day." "What's that?" "That people aren't hungry just for food. They're hungry for connection, for mattering to someone, for being seen." David nodded, watching Mia carefully color a butterfly's wings. "She saw me when I couldn't see myself. And you saw us when the world looked right through us." Mia looked up from her coloring. "Are you two done being mushy?" "Because I finished the butterfly, and I think he needs a name." "What did you have in mind?" David asked. "Hope," Mia said without hesitation. "Because that's what butterflies do. They help sad caterpillars remember they can fly." David and Sarah exchanged a look over her head, both understanding that a 4-year-old had just summarized the entire transformation they'd all undergone. "Hope is a perfect name," David said softly. Outside, Portland sparkled in the evening light. Inside, a family that had been built not from blood, but from kindness continued their daily ritual of sharing food, sharing stories, and sharing the kind of love that transforms everything it touches. Sometimes the people who have the least really are the ones willing to give the most. And sometimes, the simplest act of sharing a happy meal can change not just one life, but an entire community. In the end, Mia had been right from the very beginning. Sharing really does make everything taste better. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.